What happened at a wedding that let you know the marriage was going to end in a divorce? Story 1. Our friend was the girl who had spent a whole year setting up for the one day. They had taken 6 months of dancing lessons, and she had spent a ridiculous amount of time looking good and dressing up her bridesmaids for the wedding, of which my wife was one. So come the night of the wedding, the groom meets up with his old friends and starts to get blackout drunk. He got so drunk he didn't even recognize us, rather just pushing us aside to get to the bathroom. The worst part was the dance itself. It was really heartbreaking to see them stumble around and watch the panic on her face as he realized he had no idea what was going on. I gave it 6 months at the time, but they ended up being 3 years. She ended up marrying another woman. Well, I hope her wife is a better dancer. It can't just be because of the dancing, can it? I'm sure there were a lot of other reasons behind this. The dancing just sort of crystallized all the issues they were probably having. I wonder if they did couples counseling before they went through with the marriage. Did the groom get drunk really bad after they got married? Story 2. I thought my sister's wedding was. Her husband got blackout drunk and they got into an argument. He passed out and she ended up throwing a bucket of ice water in his face to snap him out of it. She was devastated about it. Happy ending. He made it up to her big time. Also, he felt very out of it, even the next day. Turns out he had traces of Rohypnol in his system. His own brother roofied him in hopes he wouldn't marry my sister because he wanted their own friendship to remain the same. My brother-in-law has disowned most of his family because of this, and his brother just got out of a 4-year prison sentence. What the ever-loving hell? Well, this was truly a horror story, but I'm glad this one didn't end up in divorce. Apparently, they were able to work through it. It wasn't even the groom's fault. If he disowned the family, there must have been more than just a brother that was involved in this. Either that or they reacted with, "Oh well, boys will be boys." Story 3. I was working at a wedding factory. On Monday, we got a call that the Saturday wedding was canceled. They were told that they would lose the deposit, around $7,000. Then on Thursday, they said it was back on. When the guests arrived, everyone was ticked off. It seems they told everyone it was off, then 2 days later that it was on. The ceremony was about 3 minutes. The bride then changed into sweatpants, and then everyone got angry and drunk. Well, this won't last long, I thought. Then on the following Monday, the bride walked into my then-wife's divorce attorney's office. You work at a reception hall, and your wife's a divorce attorney. You set him up, she knocks him down. I like your style. Forget about this wishy-washy couple. I want to know more about this couple. How did they meet? Did they use the same reception hall? Did they have more discussion about divorce before they got married? Is divorce a sensitive subject around the dinner table? Or do they just have a barrel of laughs swapping stories? I hope it's the last one. Story 4. At the rehearsal dinner, the groom's mom is in tears because he looks miserable. And he was. We all knew it. During the vows they had written for each other, the bride starts with, "I know I can be a pretty terrible person, and I don't know why you've stuck around, but that's all going to change starting today." They were divorced a year later. I remember attending a lecture where the speaker said something along the lines of, "Women, don't expect marriage to change your boyfriend's habits. It's just a piece of paper for formality's sake. If he's a jerk now, that isn't going to change once you're married." Story 5. The groom stabbed his new brother-in-law to unalive, with the knife used to cut the wedding cake, no less. Well, technically it happened at the reception, not the wedding. Backstory. About 4 years before the wedding, the wife's brother had shot her in the leg during an argument. Yes, alcohol was involved. At the reception, he started loudly telling the guests that he wished he'd shot her in the head instead, at which point the groom got stabby. Alcohol was again involved. So he was defending the honor of his wife. Story 6. When the father of the bride tells the groom, "How can you marry somebody like her? You're too nice. You deserve better." Surely enough, the marriage lasted less than 3 years. During the whole time, the wife was doing substances and rented herself to get money for substances. Father of the bride at my best friend's wedding told him, "She's, the bride, is just like her mother. I don't know how you're doing this." Whoa! That is a whole lot to unpack right there. Why were they getting married in the first place? Also, you might want to have second or third thoughts if the father is telling you to back off. And not back off because she's too good for you, but you're too good for her. I'd just walk away at that point. Story 7. I was reunited with a family member just before her wedding. We went out drinking, and she proudly pointed out a guy at the bar that she'd just gone on a trip with and had a week-long prenup spicy romp. She seemed to think that I'd think that was naughty and funny. I just felt bad for her future husband, but figured it was just a bad choice. The day of the wedding, I went to see her in the bridal suite. She had the guy there with her. She did him the night before the wedding. They lasted a few years, but it was a miserable few. No respect found here. Story 8. During the ceremony, when the priest started asking the bride, "Do you take this man to be your—" she started laughing uncontrollably and couldn't stop. It was cute for about 10 seconds. Then things got really uncomfortable. They lasted a year and change. We all kind of knew the only reason they were getting married was because she got pregnant. This sounds like a particular flavor of panic attack. I've seen it before, where someone who won't let themselves cry bursts out laughing instead. It's kind of disturbing and really sad. Story 9. My cousin's wedding. The groom invited his ex, who was also the mother of his 1-year-old son. He and my cousin had been dating for longer than 2 years. And my cousin, who was then very pregnant herself, got into a loud screaming match with him over it in a bathroom. They eventually came out and got married. My cousin with puffy red eyes from crying that you can see in every wedding photo that was taken. You mean they couldn't afford Photoshop on the photos? Kidding aside, that points to them having communication issues. Somewhere there was a breakdown. He probably knew she wouldn't have liked the ex being at the wedding, or maybe he just didn't consider her feelings. Either way, I can understand why the marriage didn't last. Story 10. The groom looked drunk, and the bride seemed incredibly angry. Then there was this woman walking around during the reception, placing bets on when they would divorce. I later found out she was the mother of the groom. I mean, if that's what the groom and his mother were like, I don't know if that girl wasn't right to be angry. Story 11. 4 people made speeches. The bride joked about the first time she dated the groom when she was 16 and he was 26. The groom was wasted and spoke about how each of the previous times they broke up didn't count and that they would do it right this time. The maid of honor talked about how even when they were broken up, they still got along, and the best man made distasteful jokes. Groom's brother didn't attend because he too had smashed the bride before. Story 12. At the end of the reception, the guys are sitting at a table away from everyone else talking, and we asked the groom why he proposed. His answer? Because she was naked. Marriage lasted about 1.5 years. Husband proposed while we were both naked. I just got out of the shower and he was getting in. Been together 9 years, so it can't be all bad. Maybe mutual nudity is the key. I'd agree with that. The longer-lasting couple were nude together. It sounds like they were both involved in the situation. I don't want to make any judgments, but if just the girl was naked when the proposition happened, what was the situation exactly? Was she working? Story 13. I do audio-visual for social events and weddings. At one engagement party, my coworker tells the story of the soon-to-be groom trying to carry off his soon-to-be bride. You know, because he's manly and will have his way with her. Anyway, she is screaming at him to put her down, and when he finally complies, she slaps him right across the face and yells, "I'm not done dancing!" Story 14. The groom said in his speech, "When I joined a dating agency, I never thought I'd be so lucky as to find my own personal cook, dishwasher, and washing machine." Not only is that a very bad way to describe anyone, he's in for a nasty surprise when he realizes his wife is actually a complete diva and will expect him to do all those things for her. Bad relationship all around. Story 15. We knew the couple was in trouble when they frowned during most of the ceremony, and later didn't go on a honeymoon because they couldn't agree on a destination. They had plenty of money, just no desire to compromise. Time to have 2 honeymoons. Don't see the need for frowns on that. Couldn't agree on the honeymoon? Again, you're in this together. This whole ceremony symbolizes a union. A marriage is about compromise. You have to work together. I completely understand why this one didn't last. Story 16. Groom got so drunk at the reception he passed out in the honeymoon suite by himself, but not before he latched the door so it couldn't be unlocked from the outside. Seeing the bride kicking the door and hollering at the top of her lungs to be let in at 3 a.m. was not encouraging. They divorced 2 years later. Story 17. The groom invited his female friend. She was in the early stages of pregnancy. Toward the end of the night, the bride asked the aforementioned friend who the father was. The friend cheerfully said the groom's name. I bet that marriage ended quickly. Story 18. The day of her wedding. I asked my sister-in-law if she was enjoying her day, and all she said was, "It's a freaking nightmare. This is the worst day of my life." Well, on the one hand, I can understand because weddings are a nightmare to plan and host, especially if you're the kind of person that hates attention like that. That is a good point. Was it anxiety about that day? Or was there something more? Was she willing to go through with it for the groom? How long did that marriage last? Story 19. Friend got married. On his honeymoon, his wife went to the spa. He stayed in the room to chill. Housekeeping came. A young cute girlfriend paid her for oral spicy time. Tell me all about the pride. Didn't last a year. I don't get how that would even cross someone's mind as a thing to do. Story 20. Wedding was going okay until the bride and groom got hammered. Groom's baby mama ex showed up. Then the bride proceeded to lock herself in her room crying and continuing to drink by herself. It was a feces show, to say the least. How long do you wait to leave in a scenario like that? Story 21. I wasn't there, but my neighbor is a wedding DJ. Apparently, a couple of weeks ago, she was at a wedding where the bride did her first dance with her ex, who for some reason was invited, because he was a better dancer than her new husband, and she didn't want to get, in her words, shown up. Nope, that one did not last long. It seems like she was all about appearances. Either that or he wouldn't compromise on dancing lessons. How do you let your bride dance with your ex on a wedding day? Even if you're cool with it, you shouldn't really be cool with it. Story 22. Toward the end of the reception, the bride suggested to the groom he run home and change into street clothes so they could clean the venue and get the deposit returned. Groom got back, and the bride had opened all the gift envelopes and paid back relatives with the cash they contained. Source: the groom was me. Story 23. It was a shotgun wedding. They proudly proclaimed it as such. Overheard the bride's mother saying that the bride was such a late bloomer for waiting until 19 to trap herself a man. The child is 3 years old, and they've been separated, don't know if divorced, since she was 1. Story 24. At my brother's wedding, his bride gave him the cheek at the "you may kiss the bride" part. Yeah, she ended up cheating on him with some guy online in less than a year. She was cheating on him long before that. Big red flag. I'd say you would stop the ceremony right at that point. I guess at that point it's too late. At that point, I'd go straight for annulment. Story 25. The groom's vows. Dear bride, we've had our ups and downs. Mostly downs. Bonus point if he actually called her bride. Story 26. When I was 17, I was a bridesmaid in my 19-year-old cousin's shotgun wedding. After the ceremony, we got into the limo to go to the reception. She turns to me and says, "God, I wish I was single." Story 27. My uncle red-faced and screaming at 14-year-old me on his wedding day to make sure I wear condoms so I don't have to marry some shrew I knocked up. Well, at least he did care for your future. Just for the sake of the baby? If that was his feelings about it, they should have not gone through with it. They should have gone to counseling. Should have worked out some kind of agreement regarding the kid. It's obvious they were never going to work as a married couple at that point. Story 28. The groom would not stop crying. He cried through the entire ceremony and most of the reception. This happened at the wedding I was in too, but it was the bride, literally sobbing all day. Story 29. Bride had cold feet prior, but she decided was into it. At the ceremony, she freaked out when the priest, whoever, said they'd handle sending the license stuff in instead of her being able to handle it later. Her way out? Story 30. Dude said the wrong name at the altar. Pastor at my brother's wedding said, "I now pronounce you husband and husband." No, my brother is not gay, and yes, the bride's family is very, very conservative. I was gonna say that this guy was just riffing off of Friends and telling a story. Was the wrong name at the wedding a guy's name here? And if so, did the priest know about it too? Either way, I know there was a conversation happening. Story 31. Sister's wedding. Husband ends the speech saying, "Thanks for settling for me." 18 months later, they agreed to divorce. That seems like a cute joke, unless it's true. Story 32. Groom mashed the cake into the pregnant bride's face so hard she went down backwards. Groom and his father ended up fist fighting in the bathroom. Cops were called. Fun times. Story 33. The groom's mistress found out he was getting married and showed up at the wedding in the middle of the I do's, walked right up on stage, and smacked him in the face. Wait a minute. The groom's mistress. The groom's mistress. He already has a mistress? Was this part of his plan? Did the bride know? Did the bride have a boy toy? Was it an open marriage? Story 34. My cousin, the bride, told us as she was going from table to table thanking the guests that she didn't think it would last. We were stunned. They lasted about a year. Story 35. The bride got blackout drunk and asked me to unalive her husband. He was busy fighting one of his groomsmen in the other room. They divorced 2 years later. Story 36. While saying the classic I do, instead of looking deep into his bride's eyes, the groom was peeking at one of the bridesmaids. Was he window shopping? Maybe he wanted to get his mistress shopping done early. Apparently, it was not with the consent of the bride. Did the bridesmaid return the look? Story 37. They spent $50,000 on a Disney wedding, and the bride spent zero time anywhere near the in-laws for several hours. She ran off a week later. Story 38. The groom called the bride a runt at the reception. They totally got divorced. Yeah, that'll do it. Story 39. Walked in on the groom getting railed by one of the groomsmen in the suite at the resort during the reception. That is unfortunate. I think we're also beyond the point now where we should be shocked that it was a homosexual encounter. Love is love, and cheating is cheating. Story 40. I was in charge of choosing a male strip club for the bachelorette party. I went to check a place out, bumped into the groom in the audience. Story 41. Just got married 2 weeks ago. Wife's father engraved her name and wedding date on the cake knife. Mine was absent. When you marry someone, you do marry their whole family. I'm sure you're going to expect not to get along with everybody, but I don't think many people would go along with being ignored by family like that. I bet the father would be the first one to go to the groom and the family for help when they were in financial trouble. The groom could just give the guy the knife that he just had engraved and tell him, "Hey, sell this, maybe that might get you some cash." Story 42. The groom didn't look at the bride once. That's really sad. I'd be crushed. Story 43. Groom got caught getting frisky with a bridesmaid. That marriage lasted for about 2 hours. Story 44. My sister's new husband made out with a bridesmaid on the dance floor of the reception. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.